about the walled cities. And he's trying to move them by the will of God. But they're not going. The real issue, they didn't want a theocracy. They did not trust God enough. And even though the man was performing miracles, when push came to shove, they knew the people. Let me put it in terms you can understand. They knew the people sitting in the pews. They didn't know the guy on the platform. I'm going to tell you, one of the things that I found out about leadership is the larger a work gets, the more authority, or let me say it this way, the more influence leaders that are underneath the pastor will have. You know why? Because the larger a church gets, the fewer people the pastor is able to associate with. Sometimes they don't even really know them on a first name basis. You can't name the kids and the grandkids. But the guy sitting in the pew that's also a leader, he does know them. See, Moses, those men that were with Moses were rulers of thousands. They were men that the people knew and the people trusted. The reason they didn't go into the wilderness, the reason they didn't go into Canaan was not the people. The reason they didn't go into Canaan was 10 leaders. If those 10 men would have stood up with Joshua and Caleb and said, we can do this, they would have been in Canaan 40 years earlier. Do you understand that an entire generation of people missed God for 40 years because of 10 men? Men that Moses trusted, but they betrayed him. And as a result of that betrayal, not only did those men die in the wilderness, but their families died in the wilderness. In fact, every person that was 20 years and up died. That's a sad thing. You talk about a tragedy. That is a major tragedy. You know something? If and my relationship with Pastor Timothy is because the bishop has asked me to pull close to him. I'm not trying to step in the way. But if I have any influence at all in this guy's life, you know what I'm going to tell him? You can only trust who you train. People that will not take teaching, what they're telling you is they're not teachable. If I have any influence in his life, you know what I'm going to encourage him to do? I'm going to encourage him to set up a standard for leadership that's necessary. I used to tell our folks, you know what? You don't have to be a leader to be saved. But if you're a leader, there are some things that's not negotiable. You know why? Because I'm the one that has to stand before God and give an account. I'm going to make sure that the people that I place in positions of influence are going to influence in the right way. And if a person is unwilling to follow that standard of leadership, it's okay. They don't need to do that to be in the church, come be a part of the church, but to be a part of the team as far as leadership. It's necessary. And I'm going to teach those leaders on a consistent basis, because it's the only way we're going to be able to know, are we all on the same page? Because what will happen, especially in a work this size, what will happen if that isn't in place, people will raise up. Personal agendas will become, don't agree with this, don't like this, And they're not going to, I don't know if he knows this yet or not, but I can give him some really good advice right here. You listen, he can listen, and I'll tell you, it's this. I found out that as a pastor, I'm usually the last person that finds out stuff. There's stuff going on, I don't know anything about it. They all think you're so spiritual, God tells you everything. You better be glad God doesn't tell the man of God everything. He does sometimes. But I'm going to tell you, a lot of times he doesn't. You know why? Because he wants that man of God to be able to stand in that pulpit and preach and not know anything. And so he finds out stuff. But usually by the time he finds it out, we already got a crisis on our hands. When if the leaders would be loyal, they could put the fire out long before it ever becomes one. What's this have to do with church government? Is this okay? See, I touched on this yesterday a little bit. This thing called submission. I want to emphasize it again. I want to say it again. You don't need submission if you all agree. There's no need for submission if everybody agrees. You know why God instituted the principle of submission? Because he knows you won't. That's why he said, with everything in you, live peaceable with all men. You know why? Because he knows there's going to be people you can't. I'm telling you, there's some people, I said this yesterday, there's some people God can't even save. You know why? Not submitted. See, the real issue is, if they're not submitted to me, it's kind of like God said to Moses, or God said to Samuel. Samuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. When a person doesn't submit to their spiritual leader, they're really not submitting to God. My wife really helped me. She is an amazing lady. I wish she was here. I got to get her here one of these days. But she's quiet, doesn't say much, but when she talks, it's worth listening. And I was as a pastor, and I was just, sometimes people get stuff against you and you don't even know it. You just feel this, where's this coming from? What's this about? You don't even know what it's about. And usually by the time it gets to you, you're mad at me. I am? What did I do? You looked at me.